Psalm 91. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And then we'll go forward to verse 14, and this is the Lord speaking. Because he has set his love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high, because he has known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble, and I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. Welcome to Healing Miracles, and we're going to welcome our very special guest today, Frieda, who is a survivor of the Holocaust. Welcome, Frieda. God bless you, and you have a very long testimony, so without further ado, we're just going to hand it over to you, and you give your testimony.
Thank you. Shalom, Baruch Hashem, Yeshua HaMashiach. Peace and blessed is the name of Yeshua, Jesus, the Messiah. Ladies and gentlemen, I have come to tell you a little bit about my life and how God in His mercy saw me through the Holocaust, escaping 8 times, and how I found Yeshua in the Old Testament. My name is Frieda Roos van Hessen. I was born in Amsterdam, Holland, in a Jewish family, father and mother and 2 brothers, Bernard and Eddie. And we all had a wonderful education, but however, there was never ever any talk about religion. I didn't even know who Moses was. The only thing that I do remember is that both my brothers were bar mitzvah, because even when we do not do any religion, the boys become bar mitzvah at the age of 13 when they become, according to the Jewish law, a man responsible. So I went at the age of 6, I went to school, and in a little while I was told that I was supposed to stay home a day because that was the Day of Atonement. So I asked my father and mother, what does that mean? Why am I supposed to stay home? And they told me that's just another holiday. And that was, as far as my religious education was concerned, Jewish religious. Now I became a teenager, and as a teenager I met this very handsome boy, and he was half Catholic and half Protestant. He had a mixed father and mother, mixed religion. So that caused a lot of trouble in a Jewish home, because a nice Jewish girl doesn't go with a Gentile boy. So he could not come home in my house, and we needed to find a solution to the problem. And so I found a solution to the problem. I said, why don't we go to the Catholic Church? It's always nice and dark there. And so we were sitting in the back, hugging and kissing. And that was actually my first introduction to Christianity. So, but every time when we would be walking out of the church, we would be passing by the paintings that are usually in the Catholic Church, and they are picturing the Jesus going to the crucifixion, the 7 stages. So every time when I looked at that, I would say, I can't believe this man. He looks so sad. He must have suffered a lot. Of course, I never realized that suffering was done for you and for me. I came only to know that much later. So now at the end of high school, I started my singing lessons. I became a professional concert and opera singer. And I will spare you all of the things that I did. Some of them was that I sang the role of the Queen of the Night for the Wagner Society, that I sang the Waldvogel in Siegfried for the Bayreuth Festspielhaus when they came to visit in Amsterdam, Holland. I made the soprano part. I sang for Verdi's Requiem for the royal family, and on it went. And then all of a sudden, when I was supposed to go to Belgium and sing the C minor Mass by Mozart, all of a sudden there was war, and we were in a Nazi occupation, so that fell all the way through. So when the Nazi occupation came to Holland, that was the beginning of the misery for the Jewish people. When they came, after a while, that they did not anything, all of a And we were told, everybody, the whole population, we were told that we had to have a registration card so that they know who everybody was. And for the registration card, you had to bring 2 passport photos. So when we got there, it became a trap, actually. When we got there, we all got registered to have a form filled out. And on the form, you had to make your fingerprint, and you had to have the photos. And then they would ask you to fill out at a certain part, what is your religion? Of course, the Jewish people filled out that they were Jewish people. And so that became a trap. By that time, after that, they knew exactly where the Jewish people were and how many there were. There were 120-some thousand Jewish people in Holland. Okay? So then, of course, came the time that the Jewish people couldn't do anything anymore. I was still singing at that time, but there came this moment that we were not, I was persona non grata. I was no longer wanted. And for example, I gave a big concert in Amsterdam, and the reviewer said that he did not feel that he wanted to write a criticism or review on me in the biggest newspaper, because after all they had suffered already from the Jews, he didn't feel called to write a review on this person who was Jewish. So that, of course, the Lord always brings something good out of things that are meant for bad. And it was also all of this working that we couldn't do anything. It became actually the creation of the Jewish theater, which we had never had in Holland. In the meantime, all the great artists from Germany and from Austria, they did come to our country, because we always gave asylum to everybody that had been persecuted. And they started the Theater der Prominenten. I was one of the prominent people at that time in the concert world, so they heard about me and they asked me would I work with them, and I did. And so I was not only singing my own repertoire, but I was asked also to play in the sketches that they were performing. And so I learned to speak German really very fluently, which came in later, very handy, which you will hear much, much later in my testimony. Okay? Now, also after that, there was a theater that engaged me for singing light operas. So while we were doing the operettas of Gräfin Countess Maritza, Waltz Dream, The Chardes Queen by Emmerich Kallmann, I would be singing the lead role. And on one time I did meet Aya, who was one of the ballerinas. And Aya introduced me to her family, who really wanted to meet me, her brother, her sister and her brother-in-law, and we became very, very solid friends. So one day, coming home to my own father and mother's house after visiting Henny, all of a sudden there was a razzia. A razzia, R-A-Z-Z-I-A. At that time, they just dragged all the people from the street and put them in cattle wagons, and that was destination concentration camps. So while I was going home, sudden there was this man standing in front of me with a police uniform, and that was Kees, my former boyfriend. And so he said, why don't I bring you home, because otherwise they may pick you up too. And so I did. I let him bring me home, and then he told me that he was married, and then prompt after that he asked me for a date. And I said that I couldn't do that because he was a married man. So a little while later, then also he asked me, where are you living? And so I gave him Henny's address, and I gave him Henny's telephone number. Henny was Aya's sister that I mentioned before. And so that was one of the dumbest things that I've ever done, and a very tragic thing to boot, okay? So a while later, again when I was in my parents' house, all of a sudden Henny called, and she was panicked. Her husband had been betrayed. Her husband had been taken prisoner by the Gestapo. It turned out that he had given extra ration coupons, because we all lived on coupons, and he had given extra ration coupons to his accountant. And when somebody in the store noticed that this man had extra coupons, somebody called the Gestapo. So they took this man, and actually after torturing, he finally had to betray, he did betray Sam, where he had gotten the card. So they went and they got Sam too. So now Henny was alone in this 3-story house with 2 small children, 18 months and 4.5 years old. And so I said to my dad and mom that I felt that I should go there and stay with her, that it wasn't safe for her to be alone, and my father really didn't like that. So while I was staying with Henny, there came all of a sudden a telephone call from Case, and he wanted to make another date, and I said that I wasn't going to do that. And then he said, "Now, for your information, I am now a Gestapo agent, and I hear that you have the radio playing. You're not allowed to do that." So he asked me for a date, and I said no, and he hung up, and he was very angry. And so through my brother, who was working for the Jewish Council, Henny and I became members of the Jewish Council, which meant that if it was our turn, logically, we wouldn't have to go because we were working for the Jewish Council, okay? So the Nazis rounded up thousands and thousands of people every night, 8,000-9,000 people, and they would bring them to the theater where we used to play the light operas, okay? That became a holding place for the people that were going to be transported. And the conditions were incredible there. I had lice, scabies, you name it, I got everything, okay? So now with Sam being in prison, they had a friend by the name Hans Hansen, and he suggested that he adopt the little girl, Miriam, false adoption of course, so that she would be safe. And then in the meantime, he was not just head of the labor department in Amsterdam, but he was also head of the underground, and the Germans never knew that, okay? Now my father, through his military connections, he had tried to find a hiding place for me. However, with my scabies and lice and everything that I had, I thought that I just could not do that to other people. And so we asked, could the older girl, Felicia, who was 4.5 years old, could she go? And so they came and they picked up Miriam, and Miriam went with Hans, and Felicia, the older one, went with the LeBeaus, okay? So the woman came to pick her up, and she left. We were not to know for 4.5 years. We never knew where that child was. That we had to promise that we would never try to find out for her own safety. Okay, so the people that got them, that got Felicia, the man was a very famous painter, a very famous artist and glass blower with works all over Europe displayed. And he was making our false registration card. At that time, the people just dropped the registration card to try to help the Jewish people. And then these artists, they would make the false names and everything falsified so that we would go into hiding underground, okay? And so I got a false registration card, and I was supposed to be a housemaid. And at that time, my earthly father, who was still very worried about me, my dad, he did not like it that I was living with Henny, and he said one day, "What are you going to do if they come for you?" And I said, "Well, if they come for me, I throw Henny in the linen closet, and I run to the dumbwaiter." It was a 3-story home. So they had this dumbwaiter bringing the food and whatever was needed from the one floor to the other floor to the kitchen, etc. Which was a big dumbwaiter. It was big. And so I said, then I go under the dumbwaiter, in the dumbwaiter. So my father, he was concerned about me in a different way as my heavenly Father, naturally. And so he came over and he said, "I want to see if that is possible, that you can go under the dumbwaiter." So he hoisted the thing up. It was all steel. And he said, "Okay, you hold this." And then he took all of the woodwork under there, the planks were beams that was where it came down on. He took all of that out, and then he said, okay, now I want you to step in there. It was about a cubic yard, the whole thing. It was about a cubic yard, I would think. So I had to step in there, and then he let the elevator down on me very gently, and I yelled, oh, I don't like it, this is horrible. I'd rather go to Poland. Believe me, I changed my mind quickly. Okay, so now, it was a little bit later, maybe 10 days later, and we were home, and all of a sudden, the wife of the accountant had been to The Hague, where her husband and Sam were in prison, and she came to bring a report of how they were doing. Now, we had curfew. The Jewish people could not be out of the house without, after 8 o'clock, but the Gentile people, they could be out at least until 10, 11 o'clock, or not at all, in no curfew at all. Well, she came to tell us that, and I had before, it was a very warm night, it was September 11th, and it was a very warm night, and it was our night off from the work in the Hollandse Schouwburg, where all these people were so transported to the concentration camps. And so Henny said, we had the windows open, why don't you sing a little bit for me? I haven't heard you sing so long. So I sang a couple of opera arias. And then Betsy came, that was the wife. Okay, so she stayed, and it was about, I would say, 9:30, and she said she was going home, and Henny said, okay, I'll bring you downstairs, I'll let you out. And that's what she did. All of a sudden, she came upstairs back, and she said, you know, I didn't have the key with me. Where's the key? I want to lock the door. I said, well, why don't you forget about it? Let's go to bed, I'm tired. Anyway, she insisted, now that was the Lord's protection, you see. She insisted that I give her the key. So she went downstairs, locked that door. We went up and we went to bed. We had, everything was in a blackout. Instead, the regular blinds that you have here, all the shades had to be black. And so there was no light in the city whatsoever. Now every city was blacked out. So there was this little light, we were in bed, and we were reading. There was this little light behind us that you have here under the paintings to show up the paintings, very tiny little mushroom light. And all of a sudden, we were maybe 10 minutes there, and all of a sudden, the big flashlights came into our room. That are the lights that you have here when they search the sky for safety for the Air Force and so. And all of a sudden, that strong light came into our room, and we heard them say, yeah, it's here. Okay, so I pulled the light off the wall, and in trying to run away, or do run away, I forgot to put Henny in the linen closet. I grabbed her hand, and we ran both to the elevator, to the dumbwaiter, to the children's room. It was on the other side of the house. And so I hoisted it up, and Henny went in under, and then I jumped in it, and then the thing came down on us, about 200-300 pounds steel came down on us. Well, I don't need to tell you what happened. Henny was black and blue, her arm she couldn't use. I had, after we were in there for about 45 minutes, like a million needles in my legs. They were crushed under me. And so, anyway, we were sitting there, and in the meantime, they were making a racket. They tried to get into the front door, and they couldn't because Henny had locked the door. So there was a little window in that, like a diamond-shaped window, and they broke that. And then they tried to get through that to open up the latch, but they couldn't do that, you see, because the latch didn't work. So then they kept with axes, I guess, to break the door, but those doors of those old-fashioned homes on the canals, they are that thick. So they decided that didn't work. In the meantime, we were sitting under the dumbwaiter hearing all this going on, this tremendous noise. So then they went to the door, next door, to the people that were living next door to us, and I was friends with them. The girls studied voice with me, and they asked these people, now they told us this later, what I'm telling you now. So they asked them, did you see any people living next door, any Jewish people? And they answered them, we haven't seen any people here, at least for 6 weeks. Okay, so then they didn't believe them, so they said that they went to the house and they went to their, what you call that, like a loft outside, and then they yelled. By this time there was so much going on that at the background from the other street, the people were standing on the balconies because they were finding out what was going on. And so they yelled, have you seen any Jews living here, any people living in this house? And nobody said a word except the milkman. In those days they delivered the milk still to the door. And so he said, yeah, they must have asked for my name, because he said, they heard him say, yeah, she's there, we heard her sing tonight. She is there. So that was all handled by Case, who would be the only one. The other ones, nobody ever would know that I was living there as a singer. So that was the betrayal of my ex-boyfriend, who was angry with me for not dating him. So what happened then, they went from they took a ladder and they went down into the basement in the yard of our house. Then they put a ladder against the loft. They came on our loft, and then they were facing these gigantic big glass doors in those old homes, the very tall doors. And so they were facing the glass doors like you have here when you go to the yard, you have glass doors. And so they broke those glass doors with axes. This was a noise that I cannot even begin to tell you. Everything fell apart. And here we were sitting, here is the glass door, and here we are sitting here. So that was right next to our ears. So now they were in the house, okay? But when they were in the house, they were faced with another door that was locked. And in those days, when they took the businesses away from the Jewish people, they had what they call a verwalter. Okay, that was a business taker. I don't know how to call that in English. But anyway, he would then lock every bit that had to do with business, and Sam had an electrical part business in the attic and part in the other part of the bottom of the house, the basement. And so the verwalter had locked the door, so now they were stuck with something that their own German people had done. They couldn't get in. So now they went away. We heard them say, let's go to the verwalter and we'll get the key. Okay? So they all left. So now we waited under the elevator because we didn't know whether there was somebody there, whether there was not somebody there. We didn't know whether somebody was standing on guard in front of the house. We had no idea what was really facing us. But after about, I would say, a good half hour, 40 minutes, I said, Henny, we need to get out of here. So we hoisted up the thing and we got out as best as we could. Now, listen how God took care. Here we were sitting, here is the elevator, we are sitting under that, and here is the window. And would you believe that the window was open even more than a foot wide? All they would have had to do was lift up the window, go to the elevator, dumbwaiter, and get us out. But God blinded their eyes, and they never saw. Praise the Lord. So after that, now we had to escape. So Henny's husband had given her a package with raw diamonds, and he said, if ever anything happens to me, here are diamonds, and then you will have to sell them so that you can always have food, that you can take care of yourself. And I'm going to put them right here. So that was the door to the attic. He had opened up a panel, and he had put the diamonds behind the panel. So now we had our clothes on. We put our coats inside out so that they were dark. It was about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And not daylight yet, really. Here, Henny said, now we have to go to the attic, but the attic was locked. The door was having a padlock on it. Now, I do not know, I cannot tell you how I did it. All I know is that I asked her for something, and with that something, whatever that was, a tool, God gave me enough strength, and I broke that padlock. So now we went up that small stairway going up to the attic, like a bathroom window we were facing at the end, you know. And we took the diamond, Henny took the diamonds, And so we were up now, and then I said the only way we can escape is if we can get next door, and that is what I had said before, why we went to the attic. So I said if we can be able to get next door, we can escape. So we went up, and now I was facing that little window. She had 2 kids. I told her, let me do this. So I went up, and I was standing here, stepped out into the gutter, which kept me. I didn't come down. It was 4 or 5 stories high, and so I had to come to the next house. And Katja, the girl that studies with me, she had told me that when her brother is home, who is with the merchant marine, he has a room upstairs in the attic, but he is only home twice a year, once every half year. And so I said to Henny, well, I don't know, I just hope. I didn't know anything about talk to God. I just talked to Henny. I said, well, I just hope that this man is home. So I was in the attic, and I was in the gutter, and I fell forward, 4 stories, 5 stories in between, hanging forward, and I had my ring, and I just made the window, and I tapped on the window, and wouldn't you know, the man was home. So they were so excited they couldn't believe it. They said, how can 2 women hold out to all this racket? We can't believe that. So now what they did, they pulled me in, and then we told Henny what to do, how to move and take courage to go into that gutter, and they put Henny in. So then we had to take the stars they gave us. I forgot to tell you that they gave us yellow stars with the word Jew in the middle, and it had to be sewn on your clothes. If it had been pinned, then they had a reason to arrest you. It had to be sewn on all the clothes. Okay, so we took all the stars off. We took the stars off our clothes, and now we had to go and see if we could escape.
You have so much more to share with us, and what we're going to do, we're going to start up where you left off next week. And this is going to be a little tease for everybody that's watching the program. You're going to want to watch it again next week to find out what happened. So, shalom. See you then. Healing Miracles is funded by family, friends, and partners. Please consider becoming a partner today. God will richly bless you as you sow a love seed into the good, fertile soil of this ministry. Help me take God's glorifying, awesome testimonies to the world. Revelation 12:11 tells us, for we are overcomers by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Thank you.
I believe in miracles, for I believe in God.
Welcome once again to Healing Miracles. If you watched the program last week, you will want to stay tuned again this week. Our return guest is Frieda, who is a survivor of the Holocaust. God's a good God, and he had his hand on her life all through that experience. So let's welcome again Frieda. And Frieda, we thank you for being our guest. It's a fabulous testimony. It's something that people need to hear. So continue where you left off last week.
Okay. Well, you might remember that I was saying to you, talking about our escape, which I call in my book, by the way, which is also going to come out sometime next year. And it's called The Great Escape. This is really the first great escape. I escaped 8 times. We escaped 8 times, Henny and I, okay? And so I told you that we had stars with the yellow stars with the word Jew in it, and we had to take that off our clothes. And so now that we did that, and now we had to escape. So, but before I could escape, I had to change my appearance. And I was just starting to tell you that I had a student. He was a man, but he was a tenor, but he was also a beautician. So we called him, and he said that we had to go to his place, come to his house, which was very tricky also because we were afraid that I was so well known that people would know me and betray me. Everybody betrayed everybody. You couldn't even trust your own family at times, I think. And so we went to his house, and he knew exactly what to do. He cut all my beautiful long dark hair off, and he made it into like a Dutch boy. And then he used 25% peroxide and bleached my hair, making it totally porous, by the way. Later it broke all off in tiny little pieces. But I looked at that time, I was orange. I looked like a carrot. It was awful. And so now we had to escape. And so I had also befriended, while I was working with Henny at the theater, where all the people were being brought in their razzias, I had made friends with a Mr. Busnach. And Mr. Busnach told me, if you ever have to escape, let me know and I'll give you an address. And so he gave us the address to go to Tilburg, which is the southern part of Holland. So we went in the train, early in the train, and we went to the southern part of Holland. Something happened on the way, it takes too long, I don't have that much time. So I will tell you now what happened in Tilburg. We were there about 10 days. In the meantime, I had asked them also to bring my father and mother down there because I felt that by me escaping, that my father and mother would be in danger. And so the man, a very beautiful, gentle man, a Gentile, by the way, he went to Amsterdam and he came back with my mom and dad, who only stayed about 1 or 2 days, thank God. Otherwise, there would have been panic before the panic already by escaping ourselves. Okay, and so we were there, and I would say we were there about 10 days, and all of a sudden I happened to go downstairs. We had a room upstairs, and I went downstairs, and all of a sudden I hear this commotion going on, and I hear this man say, "How did you find us? How did you find us?" And the man said, "Oh, well, that was very easy. There was a milkman on the you don't associate with milkmen, let me tell you. That was the second milkman. So he asked the milkman, "Do you know an address where there are Jewish people?" And that man said, no, I'm sure very innocently, he said, "Go to Molengrachtplein number 16, there are a lot of Jewish people there, maybe your friends are with them." And that's what they did. So that is what had happened. Now when I heard that, I was so shocked. That was the first, after the Great Escape, that was the first time that God was really leading me, just go, just go. I went upstairs and I told Henny, we got to get out of here. We're not going to stay here. So she didn't want to go. Whenever we went to go, she didn't want to go. And he said, if you don't go, then I'll go by myself. So I called Mr. Busnach and I told him that I knew a girl, she was also in the opera field. Would he go to The Hague to her and find out if she could help us out? In the meantime, we didn't hear for a day, and then he came to us to Tilburg, and he said that, no, he phoned us, that we had to go to The Hague, to the Daniel Street, and that there was a rooming house that he had gone to, because she wasn't there, that lady, so he had gone to the newspaper. So he took this one street and he went to the Daniel Street and he knocked on that door and he asked the lady, he said, I see that you have room for rent. I need a room for 2 ladies. Well, she said, that is too bad. I just rented out my room already. But there is an old lady on the other side of the street. Maybe she has still a room over. That was God's leading. So he did, and the lady said, okay, let him come. So we went to that lady, and I felt that she should know that we were refugees, whatever you want to call us. And she said it was okay, we could stay there, but we would have to live first. She gave us her living room, which had like a bed that you could flip against the wall. and then at night you open it up. And so we had to promise her that if ever anything happened, that we would make the room as nobody had left there. After about 6 weeks being there, every time, you whisper 24 hours a day, you whisper, 24 hours a day, you're really expecting something may happen. All of a sudden at 2 o'clock in the morning, now the bed was so small, we were lying like spoons, like so, together. And all of a sudden, I literally felt Henny's heart beating like crazy. So I said, what's going on? And I couldn't hear, and I had hearing trouble. And so she said, I don't know what's going on, but something is going on. So in the meantime, this old lady comes flying into our room in her nightgown. And she said, get out, they're in the house. So what happened was that the Nazis had come after curfew time, and they wanted to see all the rooms. We had been betrayed, but at that time, she didn't know how this all had happened. And so she said, I have Jewish people upstairs in the 3rd floor. That was a mixed marriage. And when you were mixed marriage, Jew and Gentile, you were supposed to be the last ones to go. It's just like the people from the Jewish council, okay? And so she was very smart, and she took them to the 3rd floor. In the meantime, I threw the bed together. We threw just the clothes on, hardly anything on, a coat and a hat, and we ran out into the street. And it was a cloudburst. It was pouring rain. Now you have to visualize that we were in a city where we had never lived, but Henny remembered that her husband had business connections where she had gone one time with her. There was a German lady, Ilse, or Trudy I believe, and her husband Harry. And she said, we have to find our way. We need to see if we can find to the house of Trudy and Harry. Would you believe it was a blackout, a city we never were. There was no light whatsoever. We ran in the cloudburst and we found that house. We came to that house. This is a miracle of God. I can still not believe that happened. And so they took us in, and then the next day, when they phoned, could we come back, the woman said, no, I've had enough, they will have to go. So then is when we got in touch with a German who was working for the underground, a friend of my brother. And he found us an address in Bussen. And my father and mother he had brought my father and mother when they were gone from Tilburg. So we found a house next to my mom and dad. And so I will tell you now what happened there, and then I have to go to my salvation because I have so little time. I have so much more to tell you. But all I can tell you that is the woman was sleeping with the German. She betrayed my father and mother. I saw my father and mother with the bayonet in the back taken away to wherever they went, and they were betrayed. Not only in that, my father had not wanted to buy the fingerprints because that cost so much money in order to save the money because they didn't keep us for nothing. Everybody had to pay. And so then they came to police, and one inspector, he was a collaborator, and he wanted to see their fingerprints, and of course that was how they got caught, and they were murdered in concentration camp, and so my little brother too, my brother Eddie. And so from there, we went to Bilthoven with 3 other escapes in between, and I will tell you about the bombardment now because it's important you know about that. The Germans were having a field where they had the anti-aircraft behind the house where we were studying at that time. And one day we were in the house actually when this happened, and no, I was in the woods. I had some sprinkling wood to get for the pot stove, or kindling wood for the pot stove that we had. And all of a sudden, when I was standing in the forest, all of a sudden the Allied forces came over and they let the 4 spots they made with phosphor, and that is where they were going to bomb. And that was right above. It was 4 minutes flying from where I was standing all alone in the wood, and it was right where the military airport, Soesterberg, was in Holland. They made 2,500 craters. It was incredible. They totally destroyed the whole airport. And then I was standing there, and it started to get very dark. It was midday, and it started to get very dark, and I became very afraid. And so all of a sudden, I just didn't know. I said, what am I going to do? And all of a sudden, I heard somebody speak to me. And it was a voice, and it said, fear not, because you are not going to be killed. And I just lifted without any religion, without ever knowing anything about God. I lifted up my head and I said, okay, God. And I just knew that God had spoken to me, that I wasn't going to be killed. So I picked up my bicycle and I pedaled out of the woods. And when I came to the outside of the wood, there was a street with houses that are along that side. And all of a sudden this woman came running out and she said, I want you to come in. The shrapnel is flying around, you're in danger. And I looked at her and I said, no ma'am, I'm not going to come in. She said, what do you mean? The shrapnel is flying around. I said, madam, I'm not going to come in, I'm okay. And then she said, what do you mean? I said, well, God spoke to me when I was in the woods and he said, fear not, because you're not going to be killed. Well, she was so scared of me. She was more scared of me than of the bombardment. She thought probably this woman is crazy, you know. Well, obviously I survived and God indeed had spoken to me. So now when the war was over, you know, I met this Canadian soldier, one of our liberators, and I married him. And then I was invited with him to come to Amsterdam to my only uncle that survived, my father's brother, because he was, like I said, mixed marriage. And while we were there, he suggested that I should change my religion. Why don't you just become a Christian or Protestant, whatever he said at that time. And I gave him the classical answer, which I later found out every Jewish person said, I was born Jewish and I died Jewish. And of course, I will die Jewish, and so did Jesus. He died Jewish too, for those who do not know. Okay, and so I came back to Bilthoven, where we were having this house that was given to us because they had taken the woman that they had taken her prisoner. They gave us the house, and so I said, you know what, I'm going to go. In the meantime, I had married, like I said, and Keith went back to Canada. And so I went to the pastor of the village, and I asked him, can I become a Christian, a Protestant? And he said, well, for that you would have to study. So make a long story short, he sent me a German lady by the name Elizabeth. Well, for 6 weeks, this woman came and started talking about Jesus, about this, about that, and I kept arguing with her that I couldn't believe it. I figured she had lost it, you know. So anyway, she said she was coming back only one more time. Would I please read Isaiah 53, the famous chapter of Isaiah? But I didn't know that at that time, and the 22nd Psalm. So she came, just the day before she came, I said, oh God, that's right, I need to have that, I need to read this, and I had never read the Bible. So I found the Dutch Bible in that house, and I started reading Isaiah 53, and it was like Latin to me. I didn't understand one word. So then I said, oh yeah, she told me that I have to read the 22nd Psalm. I found the book of David, I found the 22nd Psalm. And it starts, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And immediately a light went on. I read it in Dutch. But I remember by singing the St. Matthew Passion by Bach, that the basso at the end who says, Lama, Lama, ach sabachthani. Mein Gott, waarom hast du mich verlassen? Mein God, waarom hebt u mij verlaten? In Dutch. Okay? So I said, well, what do you know? They stole that from Bach. I had it all together. The horse before, the wagon before the horse. I didn't realize what I was saying. But I wanted to know more, because now I thought, what else have they stolen from Bach? And so I came to the 16th verse, and the second half of the 16th verse, it says, they pierced my hand and my feet. Now, I had been to the Catholic Church, remember, and I had seen all of these paintings about Jesus Christ. And so, all of a sudden, I put 2 and 2 together, and I screamed. I said, no, Jesus! Then I just sat down, and I said, how could I have lived all those years without that? Oh my God, it's like coming out of a dark hole into the light. Now, I never knew that Jesus was called the light of the world, naturally. So that was just, I was hit by the Holy Spirit. It was like God took the blinders off my eyes, and immediately I just knew that that was the Messiah. Even though I didn't know the word Messiah, I knew nothing. All I knew was Jesus was what they said. Jesus was Jesus, what I had heard about, what that woman was trying to teach me. And so I was instantly converted, I would say, how you call that. I was instantly made a believer. And then when she came, I called her, when she came, we went over Isaiah 53, and I saw the whole crucifixion. And
I know when you've gone through so much, it's like reliving it again to tell it, isn't it? And that's hard. But God has been so good to you, and would you say there was a reason why He spared you?
oh, definitely, because He has used me. I've been doing a lot of work for the Lord. I've been 20 years in maximum security prison work. I've had 7 years my own services at the biggest nursing home in Charlotte. And now, for the last 8-9 years, since 1996 or a little earlier, God has used me to speak all over the world, Messianic congregations, churches, organized ladies groups, you name it, wherever they want to hear my testimony. I speak. Women's Aglow, a lot of them. I have been speaking everywhere, and I do speak everywhere God wants me. Radio, television, whatever He has for me, and I counsel people. I never learned anything about counseling, but God is using me mightily.
Praise
Praise
God.
His holy name.
Amen. You mentioned Isaiah 53, and I'm going to read a little bit of that because sometimes people don't, it's hard to believe, but sometimes people just don't read the Bible or even have one in their home. But it's so powerful because Isaiah 53, 4 and 5 tells us that Jesus bore all our griefs and He carried all our sorrows. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon Him, and by His stripes we are healed.
Amen.
And that means that whatever you have suffered, whether it's an emotional suffering, a deep hurt, a loss, if you're ill, if you have disease in your body, remember that Jesus Christ confirms His word right here in this book, the Bible, that says He did it all. He took it to the cross 2,000 years ago. It was nailed to the cross, and by His shed blood, you are healed. And that is a wonderful thing to receive. You have to receive it in faith sometimes. Actually, all the time. You have to receive that. And God is a faithful God, that He is a God, He does not lie. And when He says that's the way it is, that's the way it is. That's His promise to you. There's just so much in this about God's promises through what Jesus Christ Yeshua has done for us. We have about 2 or 3 minutes left, Frieda. Let me ask you, you had mentioned that there was so much more that you could talk about. Is there something else you could mention in 2 or 3 minutes?
I would like to come back and tell the rest.
You would? Okay. All right. So you have a lot more to share with us.
I have much more. I talked
Much
only
more.
about 2 escapes, and I escaped 8 times, you know.
Oh,
So,
all right.
Whatever, if that is probable or possible, then I would like to do that. All I can say is, as far as the people are concerned that are listening, that if you listen, really, if you listen, then you can really know what God wants from you and what you should do. All I can say is that I just don't know how people could live without that. I say that many times, because we are one breath away from God. One breath, not there, and you're dead. And you would like to know, most people would like to know, where are they going when they die? And I think that just by accepting the fact that Jesus indeed was the Son of God, that indeed that he came. I have been 4 times in Israel, and I can tell you there is not a shadow of doubt in my mind that he was there. I've been in Capernaum, I've been there, I've been walking the places that he walked. Actually, I've been going where the temple is, the steps of the temple that he walked into the temple, as he was wont to do. I was there, you know, and it makes such an incredible impression on me that I just know, I'm absolutely sure that he was what he said he was, that he did live, that he did come, and that he taught the truth, that there is such a thing as a second coming of the Lord, in which he will really judge us, or those that are believers. He will not judge with a final judgment, but people will be judged by our lives. So I advise you to look into the fact, read the Word, start reading the Gospel of John. It is the loveliest and the simplest. And after that, read the Gospel of Mark. Mark was with Jesus all the time, you know, but when he was faithful. Before he was not faithful. But he was, and Peter, especially Peter, who was with the Lord all the time. You know, they are not making any fancy remarks. They say the bad and the good. They say the things that were not nice, they say the things that are nice, but it was the truth that they spoke. And so by accepting the truth, you will know in your heart that you will go to heaven when you die. And that's actually what we all want. May God bless you and really, really give you wisdom to look into that. Read Isaiah 53. Read the 22nd Psalm. If you're Jewish especially, read the Old Testament. Jesus was many, many times mentioned in the Old Testament. Moses was a type. Joshua was a type of Jesus. There are all types of Jesus in the Old Testament where you can find him.
Oh, that's beautiful, Frieda. That's very good advice, and I hope that people will take it, because as we were talking earlier before we were on the set and preparing for the program, we just don't know when we're going to be snatched out of this life into another world,
Right.
and we need to know where we're going. We need to make that decision where you're going to go. And I'm just going to ask you right now, if you've not made a decision for Jesus Christ, to just repeat this prayer after me. Just bow your head, and it's easy to do, and it's just a safe thing to do. If you're not sure, you need to ask Jesus to come into your life, Yeshua, your Messiah. Father, in Jesus Christ's name, in Yeshua's name, we ask right now that he come into my life, that, Father, I ask forgiveness for all my sins, those I'm aware of and those I'm not aware of. But Father, I know I've offended you, and I'm sorry. So I ask that Jesus, who has whitewashed all my sins, is welcome into my heart and into my life right now. And I ask that he take over, that he do what I can't do, that he be my strength, that he be my source. And now, Father, I thank you for answering this prayer and for making a new creation out of me. And I thank you again in Jesus Christ's name. Amen. And we'll see you next week. Healing Miracles is funded by family, friends, and partners. Please consider becoming a partner today. God will richly bless you as you sow a love seed into the good, fertile soil of this ministry. Help me take God's glorifying, awesome testimonies to the world. Revelation 12:11 tells us, "For we are overcomers by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony." Thank you.
I believe in miracles. I've seen a soul set free. Miraculous, a changing one, redeemed through Calvary. I've seen the lily push its way up through the stubborn